Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan, and we're also going to stick to my Japanese home city, if I can call it that, of Osaka, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, quite a few different styles, but the one we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't tried from them yet. It's one of my favourite Belgian styles of beer, and this one also has a little bit of a Japanese twist to it, which can usually be very interesting when you put it into certain blonde styles of beer. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to stick to Osaka, like I said. We're going to go to the north of the city though, to Minoh, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Minoh Beer. So this particular one is called the Yuzu Tripel. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and I should also point out that this particular version, I believe, is last year's release, or maybe the year before. This is one of the ones that Michiko found that had been kind of pushed toward the back of the cupboard and forgotten about. So yeah, this was in amongst a bunch of imperial stouts and barley wines and things like that. So I'm hoping this one is still good, but they do this beer now, I believe it's 8% these days, and it has a white label rather than this kind of colourful one that you're seeing on this beer. But yeah, I love Belgian style triple beers, and I do love a little bit of yuzu in blonde beers as well. These are always interesting to try when I come to Japan. So yeah, definitely cool to return to Minoh Beer as well and drink one of the Minoh beers out of my lovely Minoh monkey glass that I have. So let's crack on with this one and see what it has in store for us. The Yuzu Tripel, 8.5% ABV from Minoh Beer, just to the north of Osaka City. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Minoh Beer before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment. And yeah, do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very, very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then to tell you a wee bit about Minoh Beer before we have a look at the beer itself. So Minoh Beer, as I've mentioned to you already, are from Minoh, an area to the north of Osaka, which is about 15 kilometers away from the city centre. And this area of the city is really famous for the Meiji no Mori Minoh Quasi-National Park. And this is one of the oldest in Japan, but also for the Katsuoji Buddhist shrine, which is over 1200 years old. But the monkey symbol that's often used by the brewery is a reference to the Osaru monkey population in that national park. So you can see the monkeys here enjoying a beer, as everyone likes to do. But the Minoh Brewery itself was established back in 1996, and it's owned by the Oshita family, who had run an alcohol shop for about 30 years prior to opening up the brewery. But apparently the family went for dinner one night, and on the way home, Papa Oshita pointed to a building and said that they were going to start brewing beer in there very, very soon. And it turned out that he'd bought a brew kit from New Zealand and rented out the building, and they were going to get started. But the brewery apparently had an uphill struggle when they started, because many of the Jibiru breweries were going bust in the late 1990s. And of course it was 1993, if I remember correctly, that the laws were revised in Japan and brewing was allowed. It was previously limited, I think, to 2 million litres, but it was reduced to 200,000 litres of beer per year. That was the minimum you could brew before you could actually start a brewery. But many of the little GBRU breweries who started brewing German beers and so on, the quality of the beer wasn't that good, and they couldn't match the price or the quality of the stuff that was being imported from Germany. So yeah, they simply ceased to exist. But the opinion as a result of this in Japan of craft beer wasn't that great. But Minoh have gone on to be one of the most kind of long-standing and successful craft breweries in Japan overall. But in 2012, Masaji Papo Shita sadly passed away, and the brewery is now run by the family's 3 daughters. So Kaori, who I believe is the oldest, was appointed by her father to be the brewer, and she trained initially at a brewery in Kobe before going to the National Research Institute of Brewing, RNIB, in East Hiroshima. And Kaori says that she actually learned a lot on the job from constantly tweaking her recipes, and she credits Nakanishi of Isakadoya as having been a great mentor to her as well. But in 2000, Mayuko joined the company, having freshly graduated, and she helped her sister with the brewing, bottling and labelling and stuff like this. And the third sister, Nozomi, joined the company in 2010, and she manages the kind of business side of things. She takes care of all the administrative activities of the company. But in 2015, they invested in a new bottling machine, and they opened the Minoh Beer warehouse in the Minoh area of the city as well. And these guys also run the Beer Belly pubs in Osaka as well. I think the one that's closest to me actually is in Tenma, and I visited there fairly recently, and that was really quite nice. But these guys are still a very small operation in comparison to some others, and they're brewing approximately 450,000 litres of beer per year. You can find their Pale Ale and the Pilsner. The Weizen is quite popular as well, and the regular stout. But probably my favourite beer from these guys would be the WIPA, the White IPA. That's a good bang for your buck beer, because craft beer is a bit expensive in Japan, relatively speaking. So if you're going to drink a few, you want it to be that little bit stronger. So the WIPA is the one that I would always recommend that you try from these guys. But if you do come across it, the Imperial Stout is great as well, and they've got a few other things outside of the core range, like the Boss Zaru and the Osaru IPAs, which are also very nice. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about these guys for the moment. The only other thing to add is that as of December 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 260 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. You won't see all of those released in bottle, of course. There are quite a few that are just brewed in very small batch and released at the likes of Beer Belly, and yeah, they're released at the likes of Beer Belly and at the Minoh warehouse up in Osaka. Incidentally, if you do want to see from the what the Minoh warehouse is like, you can check it out in about video that I filmed there a couple of years ago. Definitely worth it. But yeah, let's get on with that's everything I can tell you about them. If you want to learn more, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and keep up to date with all the latest goings on. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. It does look very nice, and you'll see this kind of artwork on a number of their kind of more small batch, fancier beers actually. But there you can see Yuzu Tripel on the top label, and you can also see the monkey on the bottle cap as well. Looks very, very nice. But yeah, there is quite a little bit of sediment floating around in this one, so we'll need to be a bit more careful as we pour this beer, as well as the fact that it's a triple. And what they do with triples is that they usually add a little bit of brew sugar into these. So that's why with Belgian beers you get that very light mouthfeel, but you know, you still get a lot of high alcohol because they're adding brew sugar in. So yeah, let's open this up and see what we have. Yeah, you can see a nice little bit of carbonation just creeping its way up, but we'll pour this very carefully and see what we get. Yeah, I think we've managed to leave. Yeah, we've managed to leave most of the sediment. There's some, yeah, quite big bits of gooey sediment at the bottom of this as well. So we've managed to leave most of that at the bottom. But yeah, you can see there is still quite a little bit of it in the glass there. I'm not sure how well you guys are seeing that. But yeah, anyway, not so much head with this beer. which is maybe due to the fact that it's about 2 years old, something like that. But yeah, it certainly looks very, very nice. So yeah, colour-wise, I would say this one is pretty much in line with what you could expect from a Belgian style Tripel. This is more of a kind of ambery coloured one. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too. And when it comes to a triple like this with a little bit of yuzu and stuff, you know, the type of sugar that you put into it, the rock candy or whatever, will probably affect the colour a wee bit. And then the yuzu is probably given this one a little bit of its colour as well. It is, of course, easier to alter the colour of light beers in comparison to, you know, dark things like Doppelbocks and Scotch ales and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of what you'd expect from a triple, this one is certainly within the kind of, yeah, the spectrum of colour. That's the word I was looking for. My English brain isn't working very well these days. But yeah, certainly within the spectrum of colour that you would expect of the Belgian style triple beer. Don't think we really need to say anything more about the appearance of this one. There's not much in the way of visible carbonation, which is a bit unusual for the style. But again, that could just be down to the age of this one, and you can see the little bits of particle floating around in this one. But let's have a wee look at the nose and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. I'm very curious about this. Oh, it still smells really nice though. You can smell it's a big boozy thing. It's only 8.5% as well. And, you know, that's certainly, again, within the range of a triple. You'd normally expect a triple to be like 8 to 9.5, maybe 10 at a push. So it's certainly within the range. But this smells really quite nice, actually. Yeah, you can smell. This one, probably because of how long it's been sitting, it might have got a little bit stronger in its alcohol because of the residual sugars and things like that. That's one of the risks you always take with a triple. But you certainly can smell that wee bit of yuzu coming out of this one as well. But yeah, big brown sugary notes in this, good little bit of kind of doughy, bready yeast, nice dried fruits, and then of course you've just got that more kind of fresh, citrusy, distinct yuzu character coming out of this. Kind of everything you'd expect. And you know, my experiences of Minoh have always been very positive. So I think this one is probably going to be a good beer. So let's have a wee look at that aroma a bit more in depth before we taste the thing. So, the backbone of this beer, you absolutely get a little bit of that kind of fresh, white bready bread crust coming out of this one. It has got a little bit of a kind of toasty element to it. So yeah, lovely little bit of kind of toasty element in there. Toasty fresh white bread sitting above the bread crust. You get a little hint of like a Jacob's cream cracker or something like that. There's absolutely something akin to a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker pushing its way out of this beer, and I do appreciate that. I do really like how that goes together in this one. Now, on top of the cracker and the slightly woody notes that you get out of this one, you start to get that sweet, doughy, bready, yeasty sort of thing going on in this one. There's a teeny little bit of an almost like, yeah, there's a teeny bit of an almost kind of clovey spice to this one, but that's very, very minimal. But yeah, big, doughy, like sweet, wholemeal brown bread, white bread in there as well. Yeah, just that big, doughy, like, you know, if you like toast a baguette, it's kind of like that, the buttery baguette. There's a lot of that going on in this one. And it smells beautiful. Yeah. I think the other thing, I'm trying to place what type of, you know, sugar they've put in this one, because it's very, very distinctive. I've come across this before. It really reminds me of one of these. Yeah, it really reminds me of one of the triples I've had before, maybe Galden Carolus or something else. I honestly can't think, but it really is quite familiar. So the brown sugars that you're getting in this one, you can smell there's a little bit of like a toasty caramel coming out of the beer. So yeah, lovely toasty caramel in this one. Yeah, toasty caramel, sweet, oily, like honey almost. It does have a little bit of a honey element to it, this beer. Honeycomb for sure, McVitie's digestive biscuit. Yeah, I think the way that this goes together is really, really nice. Yeah, it does get a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, is there anything else we need to say about the malty side? The only other thing I would potentially add is that there's a very slight nutty note pushes its way out of this one. So I do like how that pieces together as well. Yeah, I think that's everything. The yeast, as I say, you get a bit more of a kind of yeasty note coming out of this beer the further into the nose that you go as well, but I really like that about this one. Now, with this beer being about 2 years old, a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of it. Pardon me, a bit dry on the throat, need more beer. But yeah, the hoppy character on this one, you can still smell the remnants of some of the hop in this. I wonder if they're just using a little bit of German noble hop or something like that in here, because you do get a little bit of that lovely kind of smooth earthiness coming out of the beer. You get a little bit of herbal character as well. Certainly little remnants of a floral note, and still a fair bit of grass coming out of this beer too, I have to add. So yeah, that's really quite interesting with regard to this one. You still some of that almost noble hoppy character pushing its way to the front with this beer. I really like that. Yeah, interesting stuff. Now, the fruity side of this beer is quite interesting. As I say, I don't think we need to say too much more about the hoppy side of this one. The triple is not the most hop forward of styles anyway, but the fruity side of this beer, I'm getting a lot of like apricot, a lot of sultana, a lot of pear, kind of sitting underneath, and those are the elements I'm getting from the more oily, hoppy side of the beer. But then, yeah, I'm getting quite a lot of, I'm certainly getting quite a lot of, I would say, kind of like, there's a little bit like a fresh green apple kind of thing going on with this. The yuzu sits in the very kind of top of the nose. You can smell that distinctive citricy yuzu sort of thing. I've always said that yuzu, for me, it smells it's a little bit more like a kind of limey, tangerine-y sort of thing, but it has the potency of lemon. That's how I've always kind of interpreted the sort of yuzu type flavour. And you can really smell that. It kind of sits on the top of the nose. The yuzu side of this beer is quite subtle, but I think again it could just be due to the fact that this beer is about 2 years old. We probably need to try a fresh version of this beer as well, so maybe we can do that at some point. We can maybe do a wee re-review of this one, but yeah, trying a 2-year-old triple is usually quite interesting because these beers do mellow out quite nicely. Other than that, I don't know if we really need to say much more on the aroma, but like I say, it comes across as quite an oily triple, like quite an oily brown sugary triple, and that certainly suits me. I certainly like how that goes together. So aroma gets a big thumbs up from me. I'm quite curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. So as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy that aroma, but let's taste this one. This is the Yuzu Tripel at 8.5% ABV. The style is, as the name suggests, this one comes to you from Minoh Beer in Minoh here in Osaka. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kampai. Ooh, that's nice. That really is nice. The yuzu in this one, as I say, again, I'd be very curious to try a fresh version of this. I didn't see any bottles of, haven't seen any bottles of the new version of this, but certainly at 8.5% in this one, the yuzu comes out of it really nicely. It just gives you that little bit of distinctive, wet, citrusy character on the back end of the flavour. I really like how that goes together. It's awesome. It really is good. Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, honestly, the way that this goes together is just awesome. I really, really like how everything pieces itself together in this beer. Yeah, I love this style. I've said that on the channel many, many times before. I love these kind of big, sweet, kind of honey, yeasty type triple beers. And you know, when you add a little bit of a fruit into it, they can always be interesting as well. So I think Minoh have done a really good job of this. But I would really be quite curious to try a fresh version of it. I can imagine that it's not quite as oily and boozy as this one is. But you know, maybe this is a beer that they could age in a barrel for a year or something like that. Minoh haven't done too much in the way of barrel aging experiments, but yeah, this could work. A barrel aged triple is always quite an interesting one. But yeah, big thumbs up from me for this particular beer. So let's just break it down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. Gives you everything you want of the style, and you still get that little bit yuzu that you're expecting from the name of this beer. So let's do this. So, middle third of your palate with this beer. Yeah, the base of that middle third of your palate, you've got a lovely little bit of that kind of, you get that fresh white bready bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. As you go further forward on that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a little touch of like woodiness just sitting underneath. And that lingers into the aftertaste. That starts to come out more and more. Then you can feel there's a little bit of like a Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing. Yeah. Definitely a little bit of a more Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing to this one. And again, that lingers into the aftertaste. Then above the cream cracker, you've got a lovely, yeah, above the cream cracker, you start to get this lovely, very sweet, wholemeal, brown bready character coming out of the beer. And that lingers there into the aftertaste too. Then you start to get the white bready character above it. And these two bready layers are very dense, and they have that more kind of doughy, yeasty type quality to them. And that's something that you will often find with the Belgian style Tripel beer, and that, yeah, that really comes out in this one. But above these layers, that's when you start to get the yeah, once you start to get above these layers, that's when you get the sweet kind of brown sugary sort of things. So yeah, the brown sugar in this one's quite interesting. This beer is really pretty damn boozy actually, but I like the big kind of sweet malty boozy sort of things. And I think a lot of the way the sweetness is coming out in this beer is due to whatever rock candy or sugar they're using in this one actually. So yeah, right, above that white bready layer then you can feel there's like a circle in the middle of your palate. So the base of that circle is like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. Yeah, so a little bit of a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. And then above that, you can feel there's a nice kind of big oily circle there. And it's, yeah, Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch. Then you've got a nice big kind of, there's like a sweet, like really dense kind of honey layer above that, and that honey kind of lingers into the aftertaste as well. But maybe between the butterscotch and the honey, you've got a wee bit of a kind of honeycomb or McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of layer. But in the dead centre of that middle third of your middle third of your palate, the dead centre of your tongue generally, that's where you're getting the concentration of the boozy flavours coming out of this beer. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, I I do really like how that kind of middle third of your palate goes together. The other thing I would add is that into the aftertaste, you do get a little touch of a slight nuttiness coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that pieces together is really quite nice. Yeah, on the back third of your palate then, you've got kind of similar flavours to this. So as I often say, the back third of your palate, you get similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, they just come out at different intensities. So border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of white bread in the base, and a little bit of the more brown bready character in the base. It's almost very slightly like cakey, like a kind of fruit, sultana laden brown bread or something like that. But then yeah, you get the white bread kind of sitting above that. Then the base in the back third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of that kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. There's a wee bit of yeah, fresh brown bready bread crust, fresh white bready bread crust. Then you get the kind of brown bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy. Then you get the white bready layer as well, which feels lighter and more airy as well. And then you yeah, and then you're getting more, you're starting to get the brown sugars kind of creeping in again too, which is interesting. So yeah, you feel this kind of like butterscotchy layer, and then the drier aspects of the honey, and then above everything else you're starting to get the kind of yeasty notes. So the yeasty note sits on top of the back third of your palate for sure. So yeah, back third of your palate then, I would say the yeasty side of this beer, it's like a really dense, sweet, brown bready character there. So really dense, sweet, brown bready character. Then it's just wrapped in this kind of like honeycomb, honeyish type flavour, and it's got a little bit of an almost very slightly spicy note to it as well, which I find really quite interesting. And again, yeah, the back third of your palate, the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, goes together really, really quite well. On the on the hoppy side of things then, so for me, the hoppy side of this beer, as I said, most of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this because the beer is about 2 years old, something like that. But you still get the remnants of that green component there. In the back corners of your palate, there's a lovely little bit of smooth earthiness. As you come further forward, it's a little touch herbal, and you can feel that it gradually gets slightly more floral. It starts to get more floral the further forward that you come. So a little bit of floral aromaticity there. Then round the front curve of your palate, it's a wee touch lighter and more kind of grassy, I would say. It's got like a fresher, kind of wet, freshly cut grass kind of thing. But yeah, the hoppy character has dropped out for all intents and purposes. You would get a little bit more out of it if it were a fresh version, but still, it's nice. On that front third of your palate then, this is where you're going to get all the fruity sides of the beer. So that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel you've got the brown bread underneath. And again, it's that sort of sultana-y, brandy soaked kind of brown bread, then the bit of white bread above it. The base of that front third of your palate, you can feel there's a nice wee bit of fresh bread crust in there. Yeah, fresh kind of white bready bread crust, the brown bready layers there, the white bready layer, and then you have the, yeah, then you've got a little bit more of, how would we say, yeah, you get a little bit more of a kind of, you get a little bit of the kind of honeycomb and butterscotchy layer just sitting on top of that bread, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. Now, for me, at the back of that front third of your palate, the thing is that the yuzu sits on top of these oily flavours that I'm just about to talk about, and the yuzu lingers there into the aftertaste too. But yeah, for me, at the back of that front third of your palate, you're absolutely getting some like dates and sultanas, and as you move further forward, you get the more oily pear. Then as you reach the kind of front tip of your tongue, it's giving you a little bit more of kind of like, yeah, just fresh green apple, something like that. So yeah, the way that all goes together, I think, is really quite nice. And then the yuzu, as I say, the yuzu, whenever you add fruit into beer as an adjunct, it always kind of suppresses a wee bit of the green component of the hops, and you can feel the yuzu, just some of the juiciness of the yuzu sitting around the sides of your palate there, but it also, that kind of slightly more pungent citrusy character sits on top of everything else, which I think is really nice. Yuzu is just a very distinctive flavour, and the more time you spend in Japan, the more you get used to it, so I think that's great as well. Yeah, I like that about this beer. I do like how everything goes together in this one. It's one of these beers that's just really nice to sit and sip, and I have enjoyed that. But let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So yeah, for me, mouthfeel wise, this one, it's kind of pushing it. It's top end to mid-bodied, bottom end to full-bodied. Carbonation is really smooth in this one. I think this beer would be a bit more carbonated had it been a little bit younger, of course. But then again, a lot of Japanese beers are very clean, and you do really get that mouthfeel at this one. It's just that really clean water. And Minoh, if you go up there, you'll see the mountains right behind the town. So I'm not surprised at how clean this beer feels. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really quite nice. On the hoppy side of things, in terms of the IBUs and stuff, this beer for me, it's very low in terms of its IBU. It's going to be 15 or 20, something like that. But again, this is a slightly older version. A good little bit of the hoppy character will have dropped out. The malt base has a wee bit of dryness underneath, a lovely bit of smoothness in the middle, and lovely big oily sweetness on top. It does get slightly drier in that sweetness into the aftertaste. And the fruity side of this one, lovely and oily, quite dry fruity notes. Then you've got that more kind of citrusy yuzu just sitting on top. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really nice, and it's been a very enjoyable experience. But that's kind of what I would expect of Minoh Beer, and certainly quite cool to try a Japanese triple that's been aged a few years as well, unintentionally. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Yuzu Tripel, a 2-year-old version at 8.5% ABV from Minoh Beer, or AJI Beer Incorporated, as the parent company's name is, from Minoh, just to the north of Osaka here in Japan. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Minoh Beer as well. And you will be seeing a few more Japanese reviews over the next few videos. And you will see a few more reviewed from Minoh during this time. I do have one to review, and we'll see if we can get anything else special from them. But I will catch you guys in another review very, very shortly. Until then, Slanja, Skål, cheers, and see you guys very, very soon. Slanja just now. Kanpai.